My kids ignored me for 6 years after I sold my company. No calls. No birthdays. No help after surgery. Then they walked into the trustee's office like 6 years was just a scheduling mistake. My oldest son sat down first and said, "We're here for what's ours." My youngest opened a laptop before he even looked me in the eye. Then my daughter leaned across the table and said, "Dad, you owe us." I looked at all three of them. The last time they had sat this close to me, their mother was still alive. Now they had come back because they heard about the trust. The trustee placed one thick binder on the table and said, "Then we should begin with the rules." That was when I reached into my coat and took out a small brown notebook. The 6-year ledger. Welcome to Final Act Revenge. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Please take care of your health while you listen. Because the trust was never a reward for being my children. It was a test to see whether they still knew how. My name is Emile Barbeau. I am 67 years old, and I live in Vermont, close enough to Lake Champlain that winter has a way of getting into your bones before you even open the front door. People hear the name Barbeau and think it sounds fancy. It is not. My grandfather fixed farm equipment. My father repaired delivery trucks. I learned early that a man could tell you he loved you with hands too cracked to hold a greeting card. That was the language I grew up with. Work. Not speeches, not promises. Work. I started Barbeau Tool and Gauge in a garage so cold that coffee turned bitter before I could drink half of it. I had one used lathe, one steel bench, 2 customers, and a heater that made more noise than warmth. The first CNC machine I bought sounded like a dishwasher full of bolts, but I loved that ugly thing. It meant we were growing. At first, I made small parts for farm equipment shops, packaging plants, and local manufacturers that needed someone honest enough to say, "I can't do it cheap, but I can do it right." That became my reputation. Not cheap. Right. My wife, Sylvie, kept the books at our kitchen table. She was better with numbers than I ever was, and better with people too. She could look at a stack of invoices and know which customer was truly late and which one was just hoping we were too polite to ask. She used to say, "Emile, money should help a family stand. It should never pay them to disappear." Back then, I thought I understood her. I did not. We had 3 children. Our oldest son liked telling people his father owned a company, but he never liked the smell of cutting oil on my clothes. Our daughter felt every missed dinner like a small betrayal, and I will not pretend she was always wrong. Our youngest loved the word entrepreneur, but not the boring parts of being one. Payroll, insurance, broken machines, angry customers, and waking up at 3 in the morning wondering if you had enough cash flow to keep good people employed. I was not a perfect father. Let me say that plainly. I missed school nights. I came late to family dinners. There were times Sylvie would look at me from across the kitchen, and I knew she was asking without words if one more customer emergency really mattered more than the people already sitting at the table. Sometimes I chose wrong. I thought providing was the same as being present. It took me too long to learn those are cousins, not twins. So yes, my children had wounds. Real ones. But wounds do not give you the right to come back years later with a calculator and call it healing. After 34 years, I sold Barbeau Tool and Gauge to a regional manufacturing group. After taxes, debts, employee obligations, and reserves, the sale left me with about $7.8 million. That sounds like a lot. It is a lot. But it was not a lottery ticket. It was every winter morning, every machine repair, every loan payment, every customer who nearly sank us, every vacation Sylvie and I postponed until postponing became our habit. I did not buy a mansion. I did not move to Florida. I paid what needed paying, protected my health care, set aside money for Sylvie's care, and started talking with Harriet Knox about an estate plan that would not turn my family into vultures around a clean table. I thought selling the company would finally give my children more of me, more phone calls, more dinners. more time to become a father after spending too many years as a provider. But when the money did not move straight into their hands, something changed in their voices. They did not see a father with time. They saw a man with money. The first call came from my oldest son, not the next day, not even the same week. He waited until the sale was public enough for people to congratulate him for being related to me. "Dad," Trent said, using that smooth voice he used with customers who wanted a luxury RV they could not quite afford. "We should sit down and talk about how the sale benefits the family." The family. I remember looking out the kitchen window when he said that. Lake Champlain was gray that morning, and the trees behind the house were still bare. Sylvie was at the table sorting old medical papers into neat little stacks because she believed order could keep fear from spreading. "What do you need, Trent?" I asked. He went quiet for half a second. Then he laughed. "Why does it have to be need? I'm just saying this was a family company." "No," I said gently. "It was a company that fed a family." He did not like that. I could hear it in the way his breath changed. Trent had not worked in that shop since one summer in college, when he lasted 11 days and told Sylvie the place smelled like metal sweat. Years later, he started calling it legacy. People do that sometimes. They rename what they once rejected after it becomes profitable. Bethany called 2 days later. Her voice was softer. That always made her harder to refuse. "Dad, I'm happy for you," she said. "I am. But I hope you understand we all carried the cost of that company too." She was not entirely wrong. That is what made it difficult. Bethany remembered the dinners I missed, the recitals where I came in late, the birthdays where I had grease under my fingernails because a machine had failed at the worst possible hour. "I know," I said. "No," she answered. "I don't think you do." Maybe I didn't. Maybe parents never fully understand the childhood they created until their children turn it into a sentence. Then she said, "You have a chance to make some things right." I knew what she meant. She meant money. Quinn was the most direct. He called the sale a liquidity event, not a retirement, not relief, not the closing of 34 years of work. A liquidity event. He wanted me to invest in his logistics software startup. He said it was aligned with everything I taught him about ownership. I asked for a real business plan. He got offended. "Entrepreneurs back entrepreneurs," he said. "I failed plenty in business," I told him, "but I never called a bailout inheritance." That ended the call. For a while they still came around. Not often, not warmly, but enough for me to keep pretending nothing had broken. Then the money did not move. I helped with real needs when they came with honesty. I had paid for school before. I had helped with repairs. I had covered emergencies more times than I counted. But I did not hand out checks just because the company had sold. I had taxes to settle, employee transition obligations, health care reserves, Sylvie's care, and something deeper than all that. A fear that if I opened the vault before we repaired the family, the money would become the only language left between us. I told myself they needed time. That was the first lie I told for them. Trent stopped answering calls unless he wanted a contact in manufacturing. Bethany sent long messages about boundaries, childhood wounds, and needing space to process. Quinn texted mostly when he needed a name, a number, or advice he could later pretend had been his idea. Holidays became smaller. Birthdays became quieter. Father's Day came with silence so complete, I checked my phone twice to make sure it was working. That night, I opened a small brown notebook Sylvie had once used for grocery lists. I wrote one line. June 19th, Father's Day. Left 3 messages. I did not write it to punish them. I wrote it because I was tired of arguing with myself. A few months later, Sylvie passed. There are losses that make a house quiet, and then there are losses that teach the walls a new language. Her memorial was small, white flowers, coffee from the church basement, a framed picture of her at the old shop desk, laughing at something I had probably done wrong. Trent sent flowers. Bethany sent a text so long it felt written for herself. Quinn said he had an investor call he could not move. After everyone left, I folded the chairs alone. Cora Bell from next door stayed to help. She was 71, a retired nurse, and the kind of woman who could lift a casserole dish like it owed her money. She deserved a full room, Cora said. Yes, I told her. But what I meant was, she deserved her children. That night, I wrote again. Sylvie's memorial. None stayed to help. My hand shook when I wrote it, not from age, from finally seeing the shape of what I had been avoiding. The first year, I wrote their absence down because I still believed it was temporary. By the second year, the ledger had started to look like the truth. After Sylvie was gone, the house changed its breathing. That is the only way I know how to say it. When she was alive, even quiet had shape. A kettle on the stove, a pencil tapping beside her ledger, her slippers near the back door, her voice calling, "Emile, if you're going to pretend you're not tired, at least sit down while you lie." After she passed, the same rooms became too large. I made coffee for 2 people the first week. Then I made dinner for 2. Then, one evening, I set 4 plates at Thanksgiving. Because my hands moved faster than my memory, I stood there looking at the table and took 3 plates away. That night went into the ledger. Year 3, stopped setting 4 plates for Thanksgiving. I still called them. Trent always had a reason. "Dad, this week is crazy. I'll call Sunday." Sunday came. Sunday left. Bethany sent messages with words like healing, space, boundaries, and emotional safety. I read them twice, sometimes 3 times, trying to find the sentence where she asked whether I had eaten. It was never there. Quinn answered when he needed something. A supplier name, an old contact, a phrase I used in negotiations that he could polish and call strategy. I told myself they were busy. People are busy. Children have jobs, bills, marriages, headaches, their own storms. A father should understand that. But Cora Bell, my neighbor, did not let me hide behind that forever. Cora was a retired nurse with white hair, sharp eyes, and a way of bringing soup over like she was delivering a legal notice. One winter morning, I slipped on the back step and tore up my knee badly enough to need surgery. I called Trent. No answer. I texted Bethany. She wrote back, "Dad, I don't have the emotional capacity for hospitals right now." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I called Quinn. He replied 3 days later. Cora drove me home from the outpatient center. She put my medication on the counter, checked the ice pack, and said, "If your children ask, tell them your nurse charged you 1 casserole and 2 complaints." I laughed because she wanted me to. Then she looked at me, and the laugh died. "Children can be busy," she said, "but 6 years is not busy, Emile. 6 years is a choice." I told her not to say that. She said it anyway. That was Cora, kind enough to help, old enough not to decorate the truth. I wrote it down that night. March 12th, knee surgery. Cora drove me home. The next line took longer. No children came. There were smaller things, too. Small things are what finish a man. Trent forgot my birthday, then sent a gift card 2 weeks late with no note. Bethany posted a long essay online about generational healing on the same day she ignored my call. Quinn asked if I still knew anyone in industrial warehousing, then ended the call before I could ask how he was sleeping. And Ivy was the one that hurt in a place I did not like touching. She was Trent's daughter, 15 now, but still 12 in my mind, still asking if the moon followed the truck when we drove at night. For her birthday, I sent a birdhouse kit, good wood, safe tools. Instructions. I wrote myself because store instructions are written by people who hate grandparents. I included a note. Measure twice, cut once, and call me if the roof looks crooked. Crooked roofs build character. 2 weeks later, the box came back. Unopened, returned to sender, no explanation. I sat at the kitchen table with that box in front of me until the afternoon light left the room. Then I wrote, Ivy's birthday gift returned, box unopened. I did not know then that she had never seen it. I only knew the box had come home when my children had not. By the 4th year, I stopped leaving long voicemails. By the 5th, I stopped telling Cora they might come around. By the 6th, I understood that hope can become a kind of self-harm when it keeps asking you to excuse people who know exactly where you live. Still, I kept the ledger in a drawer, not on display, not waiting like a weapon. I would have burned it if one of them had knocked on my door with nothing in their hands but an apology. But they did not come with apologies. They came later with questions about the trust. By the 3rd year, I stopped writing excuses in my head and started writing dates in the ledger. The email from Harriet Knox arrived on a Monday morning. I remember that because Mondays had become my quietest day. Most people hate Mondays because work starts again. I liked them because the world became busy enough to stop asking me what I planned to do with retirement. Harriet wrote one sentence first. "Emile, your children have requested a meeting regarding the Barbeau Stewardship Trust." I read it twice, then a 3rd time. Not because I did not understand the words, because 6 years of silence had finally found a subject line. They had not called me. They had not knocked on my door. They had not written, "Dad, can we talk?" They contacted the trustee. That told me everything before the meeting ever began. Harriet's office sat in Burlington, on the 3rd floor of a brick building with clean windows and a view of Lake Champlain if you leaned slightly left. She had represented me for years. Sharp woman, calm voice. The kind of attorney who could cut a rope without looking like she had moved her hand. When I arrived, she already had the trust binder on the table. Thick. Blue. Neat as a church hymn. "You don't have to do this today," she said. "I do. Emile, I want to hear what 6 years sounds like when it wants money." She did not smile. That was why I trusted her. Trent arrived first. Nice coat, expensive watch, the smell of cologne that belonged in a car showroom. He hugged me with one arm, the way men hug when they want credit for the gesture, but not contact. "Dad," he said, "you look good. You too." He sat down without asking about my knee. Bethany came next, wearing a soft gray scarf and carrying a leather notebook. She kissed my cheek and held my shoulders for half a second longer than necessary, like she was trying to perform warmth in case the room needed evidence. "Hi, Dad." "Bethany, you okay?" I looked at her. That question was 6 years late, but I let it pass. Quinn came last, laptop under his arm, phone in hand, eyes already measuring the table. He nodded at Harriet before he nodded at me. That hurt more than I expected. Trent started with diplomacy. "We're not here to fight," he said. "We just need clarity." Quinn opened his laptop. "The trust was funded after the company sale, correct?" Harriet folded her hands. "We'll discuss structure in order." Bethany looked at me with wet eyes that had not earned their water yet. "Dad, you can't disappear from our childhood and then act like we disappeared first." There it was. The old wound, real enough to hurt, convenient enough to use. "I know I missed things," I said. "You missed more than things," she whispered. "I did." For one second, I thought we might talk like a family. Then she leaned forward. "But now, you have the chance to make it right. You owe us." The room got colder. Not because of the air, because something honest had stepped out from behind something wounded. I looked at my daughter. "Bethany, I owed you food, shelter, school, and love. I paid those bills as best I could. I do not owe you a reward for vanishing." Her face tightened. Trent raised one hand. "Dad, nobody vanished. Life happened." "Life happened to me too," Quinn sighed. "With respect, this is emotional framing. We're talking about a trust instrument." Harriet looked at him. "This is a trust meeting, Mr. Barbeau, not a vending machine." I almost smiled. Almost. "Before I tell you what was written in that 6-year ledger, let me ask you something. If your children ignored you for 6 years, missed your surgery, your birthdays, and every lonely holiday, then came back only when they heard about money, would you still call it family? Or would you let the rules speak for you? Tell me honestly what you would have done, because sitting there, I still did not hate them. That is the cruel part. You can be angry at your children and still remember the weight of them asleep on your chest when they were small. You can hear greed in their voices and still look for the baby teeth you once saved in a drawer. Then Trent's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, and said, "Paige wants to join for a minute." I looked at Harriet. She lifted one eyebrow. "Only if everyone agrees." Nobody did. Trent put the phone on speaker anyway. His wife's voice filled the room, smooth and practical. "Emile, I don't mean to intrude, but this trust could fix 3 households today. You have more than you need. That money is just sitting there." Harriet's eyes sharpened. "Mrs. Barbeau, which household fixed his after surgery?" Silence. A long one. Then Paige said, "I'm not familiar with all the medical details." "No?" Harriet said. "That is becoming clear." Trent reached for the phone. "Okay, Paige, I'll call you later." He ended it fast. Not fast enough. I reached into my coat and took out the small brown notebook. The 6-year ledger. I placed it on the table between the trust binder and my children. Bethany stared at it. "What is that?" "A record," I said. Quinn leaned back. "Of what?" I rested my palm on the cover. "Of the years you called busy." Nobody spoke. Harriet opened the blue binder. The paper made a soft sound as she turned to the marked section. "Before anyone discusses distribution," she said, "we need to review the governing language." Trent's smile faded. Bethany's fingers tightened around her notebook. Quinn finally closed his laptop halfway. Harriet looked at all 3 of them. "Article 3, she said. "Stewardship conditions." I watched their faces change. Not pale yet, but beginning. Harriet opened the binder to Article 3 and said, "The first thing your father's trust measures is not blood. It is stewardship." Harriet Knox did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Some people think power sounds like shouting. In my experience, real power sounds like a woman turning one page in a legal binder, while 3 grown adults realize they came to the wrong room with the wrong assumptions. "Article 3, Harriet said again, "Stewardship conditions." Trent leaned back. Quinn opened his laptop wider, like a screen could protect him. Bethany stared at me instead of the binder, as if my face might soften before the words did. Harriet began, "Distributions from the Barbeau Stewardship Trust are discretionary, not automatic. No beneficiary receives a direct distribution solely by blood relation." Trent laughed once, not because it was funny, because he needed the room to believe he was not worried. "So, we have to apply to be your children now?" I looked out at him. "No, you already are." "Then what is this?" Harriet answered before I could. "This is the difference between inheritance and extraction." Quinn's fingers stopped moving over the keyboard. Bethany whispered, "That's insulting." Harriet looked at her. "It is a clause, Ms. Barbeau, not an insult." Then she read the first condition. "To be considered for discretionary distribution, a beneficiary must demonstrate good faith contact with the grantor or trustee and must not have voluntarily ceased meaningful contact for a period exceeding 18 months without reasonable cause." The room went very still. 18 months. I watched the number land. 6 years suddenly had edges. Trent shifted in his chair. "Reasonable cause is subjective." "It can be," Harriet said. "That is why documentation matters." And Quinn said, "Family conflict is reasonable cause." "Sometimes," Harriet replied, "abandonment is not automatically conflict." That one found him. He looked down. Harriet continued, "Qualified requests may include medical need, education, vocational retraining, housing stability, or structured debt resolution under trustee supervision." Trent's face tightened at structured debt. Bethany looked away. Quinn asked, "What about business investment?" "Not unless independently reviewed and approved," Harriet said. "Speculative startup rescue funding is expressly restricted." His jaw moved. There it was, one door closing. Harriet read on. "No distributions shall be made for luxury debt, lifestyle expansion, reputation management, or legal action intended to pressure the trust." Trent sat up. "Reputation management? What does that even mean?" It means your father did not want the trust paying for someone's image problem, Harriet said. I thought of the watch on Trent's wrist, the boat listings, the house photos Paige used online, the careful life he wore like a suit that did not quite fit. Bethany put both hands on the table. Dad, this is cruel. No, I said quietly. Cruel would have been writing you out and calling it peace. She blinked. I turned to her fully. I did not refuse real need, Bethany. I refused the idea that a sale closing should turn a father into a payout machine. You keep saying payout like we're strangers. You came through Harriet before you came through my door. That silenced her, only for a moment. Then she found the old wound again. You were gone too, she said. You think money is the only thing we care about? But you were gone at dinners, at recitals, at birthdays? You made the company the fourth child. I took that, because some truth should not be dodged just because it arrives wrapped in accusation. Yes, I said. I missed things, and I have regretted them longer than you have been asking for money. Her eyes filled. I did not look away. But my absence did not teach you to ignore my surgery. That was your choice. The words hit the table harder than I meant them to. For a second, I saw my little girl in her face. Then I saw the woman who had said I owed her. Both were real. That is what makes family pain so difficult. The person who wounds you is often standing in front of the child you still remember loving. Harriet turned another page. Stewardship period. A beneficiary seeking discretionary distribution must complete a 12-month period of documented stewardship. This may include family care, community service, trade education mentorship, financial transparency, or other responsibility-based participation approved by the trustee. Trent's smile vanished. So we have to volunteer for our own inheritance. Harriet looked at him. No. You have to demonstrate you know the difference between being named and being worthy of distribution. Quinn muttered, This is absurd. Harriet heard him. This trust did not demand affection, she said. Affection cannot be written into law. It demanded responsibility before distribution. That sentence pleased me more than I expected. Not because it punished them. Because it said what I had failed to say for years. Quinn leaned forward. If the assets came from the sale of Barbeau Tool and Gage, then we have a legitimate interest in how those assets are controlled. I felt my hand close around the edge of the ledger. You hated that shop until the sale price smelled clean. His face changed, a flash of anger, a flash of embarrassment. Then his professional mask returned. I'm talking legally. So is Harriet. Harriet remained still. The trust was drafted properly. The grantor retained full capacity. The assets were legally transferred. Beneficiaries may request review according to procedure, but they cannot demand distribution outside the instrument. Trent turned to me. You really expect us to spend a year proving ourselves to you? No, I said. To yourselves. He scoffed. But Ivy's unopened box was in my mind. Cora's car outside the surgery center was in my mind. Sylvie's memorial chairs were in my mind. And for once, I did not soften the truth to make the room easier for my children. Harriet slid a single summary sheet across the table. On it were categories: contact history, care history, financial purpose, stewardship plan, beneficiary's conduct. Bethany stared at the words. Beneficiary conduct? Harriet did not answer right away. She looked at Quinn's laptop, then Trent's phone, then Bethany's notebook. Then she looked back at the binder. Before we get there, she said, we should acknowledge the contact history already on file. Holly Vance, Harriet's paralegal, placed a thin folder on the table. Not dramatic, not thick. Thin was worse. 6 years should have made a larger folder if love had been involved. Harriet opened it. Emergency discharge record, March 12th. Transport provided by Cora Bell. Nobody spoke. Returned package receipt, addressed to Ivy Barbeau. Delivery refused. Box unopened. Trent's mouth tightened. Bethany looked at him. Quinn stared at the table. Harriet continued. Unanswered event invitations, documented holiday calls, Trustee notes from Mr. Barbeau regarding no contact periods. Trent said, "This is humiliating." I looked at him. "No, Trent. Humiliating was learning my neighbor was my emergency contact because my children were unavailable." That finally took the color out of his face. Not all of it. Enough. Harriet closed the folder. Then she turned to the next tab in the binder. The label read, Beneficiary Conduct. Quinn leaned forward. "What is beneficiary conduct supposed to mean?" Harriet looked at all three of them. "It means your father knew this meeting might happen." "It means your father knew this meeting might happen," Harriet said. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Trent looked at me like I had hidden a trap under the table. Quinn looked at the binder like it had personally insulted him. Bethany looked hurt. That one was harder, because Bethany could make hurt look like evidence, and for most of her life, I had let it work on me. "You planned this?" Trent asked. "No," I said. "I prepared for it." "That's the same thing." "It is not." Harriet turned the page. "The purpose clause may clarify." Quinn let out a short breath. "Oh, good. Now the trust has a philosophy." Harriet looked at him over her glasses. "Most documents do, Mr. Barbeau. Some simply hide it better." Then she read, "The purpose of the Barbeau Stewardship Trust is not to reward blood relation alone, but to preserve the values of work, care, stewardship, responsible continuity, and meaningful family accountability." Trent leaned forward. "We're your children." I looked at him for a long moment. "That used to mean you knew my phone number." The words left me before I had time to soften them. Bethany flinched. Quinn looked away. Trent's jaw tightened, but he did not answer. Because there are some sentences a man cannot argue with unless he wants to hear himself sound worse. Harriet continued, "Distributions are not guaranteed. Beneficiaries may become eligible for consideration through documented service, financial transparency, responsible purpose, relationship repair, or other stewardship behaviors approved by the trustee." Bethany shook her head. "So, this is punishment." "No," I said. "Punishment takes something you earned. These rules ask whether you still know how to earn trust." She stared at me. For a moment, I saw the little girl who used to wait by the window when I came home late. Then I saw the woman who had learned to turn that pain into leverage. Both were my daughter. That was the problem. Quinn tapped his fingers on the table. "You turned family into a performance review." Harriet answered calmly. "Your father turned entitlement into accountability." Trent gave a bitter laugh. "Easy for you to say. You're billing by the hour." Harriet did not blink. "My invoice is not contingent on whether you become decent." I almost looked down, not to hide a smile, to hide the fact that I still loved them enough to be ashamed for them. Bethany reached for the water glass in front of her, but her hand shook slightly. "What about Mom?" she asked. That changed the room. Sylvie's name still had power. Even Quinn stopped moving. Harriet looked at me first, asking permission without words. I nodded. She removed one cream-colored sheet from the binder. This note was provided by Sylvie Barbeau during estate planning discussions before her death. Bethany's eyes filled before Harriet even read it. Sylvie had always been the one they ran to when I was too tired, too distracted, or too buried in the shop to understand what a child was really asking. Harriet read her line softly. "Money should help a family stand. It should never pay them to disappear." The same sentence. The one Sylvie had said at our kitchen table so many times, I thought it had become part of the wood. Bethany covered her mouth. Trent looked out the window. Quinn stared at the table as if the grain might offer a legal objection. Harriet set the note down. "She did not wish to disinherit any of you," Harriet said. "She wished the trust to support genuine need and responsible repair, not replace relationship with distribution." Bethany whispered, "She wrote that?" "She did." Bethany looked at me. "You let Mom be part of this?" I felt that one. Your mother was part of everything worth keeping. Her face collapsed a little, then hardened again to survive the collapse. Trent turned back. "Dad, come on! This is all language. Values, Stewardship? Fine. But at the end of the day, you sold a company that existed because we all paid a price. Yes, I said. You paid a price. He seemed surprised I gave him that much. I continued. But you did not pay it for 6 years after the sale. You sent me the bill when you heard there was something left to collect. Bethany looked down. Quinn muttered, "This is emotional theater." Then the door opened. Not all the way. Just enough for a young voice to say, "Dad?" Trent turned so fast his chair scraped. I looked toward the door. Ivy stood there, holding her backpack strap with both hands. 15 years old. Taller than I remembered. Hair pulled back, eyes uncertain. For one strange second, I did not see the meeting room. I saw the little girl in my driveway, pointing at the moon and asking if it followed every car or only ours. "Ivy?" I said. Her face softened. "Hi, Grandpa." The word hit me in the chest. Grandpa. Not Mr. Barbeau. Not the grantor. Not the old man with money. Grandpa. Trent stood. "Ivy, wait outside." Paige appeared behind her in the doorway, phone in hand, looking annoyed that the room had not followed whatever plan she imagined. "She wanted to come," Paige said. "And honestly, Emile, if we're talking about family future, she has a stake too." Harriet's eyes narrowed. Minor children do not belong in beneficiary pressure meetings. Paige's smile tightened. "We're not pressuring anyone." Cora Bell would have laughed at that. I did not. I was too busy looking at Ivy. "Did you get the birdhouse kit I sent?" I asked. It came out before I could stop it. Maybe because the returned box had lived in my mind for years. Ivy blinked. "What kit?" Trent's shoulders stiffened. Paige looked at him. Bethany slowly turned toward her brother. I knew then. Not guessed. Knew. "The one for your birthday," I said. "Good pine. Little brass hinges. I wrote instructions." Ivy shook her head. "I never got that." Nobody moved. Then she said the sentence that undid me. "Grandpa, they told me you forgot me." I had taken insults from my children. I had taken absence. I had taken the empty holidays, the unanswered messages, the surgery ride home with Cora, the memorial chairs I folded without them. But that reached into the part of me that had kept loving quietly and squeezed. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Harriet looked at Holly Vance. Holly already had the folder. She slid a receipt forward, returned package, addressed to Ivy Barbeau. Delivery refused. Box unopened. Trent said, "It was complicated." I looked and looked at him. No. A machine jam is complicated. A returned gift is a choice. Ivy looked at her father. "You sent it back?" Trent did not answer fast enough. That was answer enough. Paige stepped in. "We didn't want to confuse you. There was tension in the family." Ivy's eyes filled. "You told me he didn't care." I gripped the edge of the table. Not because I wanted to stand, because I wanted to stay seated. Anger feels different when you are old. It does not always burn upward. Sometimes it settles heavy in your hands, and you have to decide whether to use those hands to break something or hold yourself together. Bethany whispered, "Trent?" He snapped, "Don't act shocked. You all knew Dad had basically checked out of the family." I stood then, slowly. The room blurred at the edges, but my voice stayed calm. "I was never checked out of Ivy." Trent looked at me. "And yet you let 6 years go by." "I called. I sent cards. I sent gifts. You built a wall, and then blamed me for not walking through it." Ivy started crying quietly. That was enough to end any pleasure I might have taken in being right. Harriet closed the trust binder halfway. "The returned gift is relevant to the stewardship review," she said. "But more importantly, it is relevant to the child standing in this room." Paige whispered, "This is unfair." Harriet looked at her. "To whom?" No one answered. I sat back down and opened the 6-year ledger to the page I had not wanted to show Ivy. Ivy's birthday gift returned. Box unopened. The ink looked smaller than the pain it carried. I turned the notebook so she could see it. "I did not forget you," I said. She wiped her face with her sleeve. "You kept it? The receipt?" "The plans." I looked at her. Yes, I said. I kept the plans. For the first time since she had entered the room, Ivy smiled. Barely, but enough. Bethany saw it too. Something in her face changed. A crack, maybe. Or the first honest opening. Trent sat down hard. Quinn closed his laptop without looking at anyone. Paige stood near the door, arms folded, her expression caught between anger and embarrassment. Harriet reopened the binder. Article 3 establishes stewardship, she said. But your father also included conduct provisions for situations involving pressure, coercion, or bad faith claims. Quinn looked up again. What does that mean? Harriet did not answer yet. She looked at Ivy, then at me, then back at my children. I still had my hand on the ledger. My thumb rested beside the entry about the returned gift. And in that moment, I understood something worse than the 6 years of silence. My children had not only disappeared from me, they had made me disappear from her. My children had not only disappeared from me, they had made me disappear from her. That thought sat in my chest, heavier than the trust binder, heavier than the ledger, heavier than every number they had come to discuss. Ivy stood near the door, wiping her face with the sleeve of her hoodie. 15 years old, too young to be used as leverage, old enough to understand when adults had lied. Trent would not look at her. Paige kept one hand on the back of his chair, as if she could hold the room in place by touching expensive fabric. Bethany stared at the returned gift receipt like it had opened a basement under her feet. Quinn finally closed his laptop. That should have made me feel better. It did not. A closed laptop does not become a conscience. Harriet Knox looked from Ivy to my children. Before we continue, she said, I want it clear that Ivy is not a beneficiary in today's distribution review. She is a minor, and she should not be used as emotional pressure. Paige's face stiffened. No one is using her. Ivy looked at her mother, then at Trent. No one believed Paige, not even Paige. Trent cleared his throat. Ivy, go wait in the hall. Ivy did not move. For the first time that day, she looked more like a Barbeau than all of us. Stubborn in the chin, wounded in the eyes. I want to know why you said Grandpa forgot me. Trent rubbed his forehead. This is not the time. I said, that sentence has done a lot of damage in this family. He turned on me. Don't start. I did not start this. No, he said, voice rising. You just wrote all of it down like a prosecutor. I touched the 6-year ledger. I wrote it down because every time I excused you, I lost one more piece of the truth. Quinn leaned forward. Can we please return to the legal matter? Harriet looked at him. We are still in it. His phone buzzed then, not loudly, just a small sound on the table. He glanced down too quickly. So did Bethany. Then Trent's tablet lit up beside his elbow. A notification banner spread across the screen before he could turn it over. Dad's exit money. Ivy read it before any adult could stop her. Dad's exit money? The room froze. Trent snatched the tablet, but the words were already out. I looked at my children, one by one. Trent, Bethany, Quinn, Paige. Nobody asked what it meant. That told me enough. Still, I waited. Old habits. A father always waits for his children to choose the better sentence. No one did. Paige spoke first. That was just a joke. I looked at her. 6 years of silence, and you still found time for jokes. Bethany put a hand to her mouth. Quinn sat back like the chair had moved under him. Harriet's voice stayed even. I will not request private communications without process. But if any party intends to claim good faith today, voluntary clarification may be helpful. Quinn snapped. Absolutely not. Bethany whispered, Quinn, no, do not open anything. That was when I knew. Whatever was in that chat, it had teeth. Bethany looked at Ivy, then at me, then down at her own phone. Her hands shook as she opened it. Bethany, Trent warned. She ignored him. I need to explain, she said. But explanations are dangerous when the truth is ugly. She scrolled. Her face changed with every line. Then she read, barely above a whisper. Don't mention the surgery unless he brings it up. Nobody moved. Quinn looked at the ceiling. Trent stared at the table. Bethany kept going. Act concerned first, then ask about liquidity. Ivy's eyes filled again. Paige said, That is out of context. Harriet looked out at her. Then I would hate to see the context. Bethany read another line. Bethany, you handle the emotional part. She stopped there. Her voice broke. I looked at my daughter, the one who had spoken of healing, wounds, boundaries, and repair. The one who had told me I owed them. You wrote strategy where apology should have been, I said. She closed her eyes. I know. It was the first honest thing she had said all day, without dressing it in pain. Quinn stood halfway. This is ridiculous. We should pause and consult counsel. Harriet said, You are free to do that. Good. But you should understand the next clause before you decide what kind of counsel you intend to seek. Quinn sat back down slowly. Trent said, What clause? Harriet turned the binder toward herself. But before she read, Ivy spoke. Did you all talk about me too? No one answered. That was worse than yes. Ivy looked at Trent. You brought me here so Grandpa would feel bad, didn't you? Trent's face tightened. I brought you because this affects your future. My future? Ivy said. Or your money? That sentence hit the room like a hammer dropped on tile. For a second, she looked scared of her own courage. Then she looked at me. I'm sorry, Grandpa. You do not owe me an apology. I believed them. You were a child. I still should have asked, I swallowed. Children should not have to investigate whether they are loved. That broke Bethany, not loudly. She just sat down hard and covered her face. Trent looked angry because shame had nowhere else to go. Paige whispered, This is getting cruel. I turned to her. No. Cruel was returning a child's gift and calling it protection. The room went quiet again. Not legal quiet, family quiet. The kind where everyone can hear the years they wasted. I looked down at the ledger. For 6 years, I had told myself my children were busy. That night, I learned they had been organized. Harriet waited until the silence had done its work. Then she opened the binder to the next marked section. Article 7, she said. Contest, coercion, and redirection clause. Quinn's eyes sharpened. What does redirection mean? Harriet looked at him first, then at Trent, then at Bethany. It means your father prepared for this too, Harriet said. Quinn stared at her. For the first time that day, he looked less like a founder and more like a boy who had found a locked door where he expected an exit. Prepared how? He asked. Harriet turned the page. Article 7 states that any beneficiary who attempts to obtain distribution through coercion, intimidation, false claims of incapacity, or baseless litigation may lose discretionary access to future trust consideration. Trent pushed back from the table. So now we're being threatened? No, Harriet said. You're being informed. Paige crossed her arms. This is outrageous. Emile is elderly. How do we know this wasn't written under pressure? Harriet did not even blink. Holly Vance stepped forward and placed a small USB drive on the table, beside a notarized packet. The room went quiet again. Harriet looked at my children. Your father anticipated that question? Quinn's face changed. He had been building toward that argument. I could see it in his eyes. Capacity, influence. Old man confused, attorney controlling the money. It was not a new road, just an ugly one. Harriet turned her laptop so everyone could see the screen. This statement was recorded 5 years ago, she said, with 2 witnesses, a capacity evaluation, and independent review from outside counsel. Trent muttered, Unbelievable. I did not look at him. I looked at the black screen before the video began. A man can be ashamed to see himself younger, even by 5 years. I had more hair then, less weight in my face, but the eyes were the same, tired, too awake. Harriet pressed play. There I was, sitting in that same office wearing a blue flannel shirt Sylvie had bought me before she got too sick to shop. My voice came through the speakers. If my children come back for money before they come back for me, Let the rules answer them. Bethany covered her mouth. The video me continued. I am not punishing them for being absent. I am refusing to pay them for it. Nobody moved. Even Ivy stopped crying. On the screen, I looked down at my hands. I was not a perfect father. I missed dinners. I missed school events. I let the shop take pieces of me that should have gone home sooner. If my children ever say that, they will not be lying. That was important. I had insisted on saying it. A man should not write rules without first admitting where he failed. But absence in childhood does not become a lifetime invoice. The video continued. And hurt does not give anyone the right to vanish for years, then return with the demand. Trent looked at the table. Quinn folded his hands too tightly. Bethany was crying now, silently, without the careful softness she used when she wanted to persuade a room. The video went on. This trust is not a wall. It is a door. But I wrote it so no one could kick it open and call that family. Harriet paused the video for 1 second. Do you need a break? No one answered. She let it continue. If any beneficiary wants to repair relationship, they can. If they have real medical need, real educational need, real housing need, the trustee may consider it. But the trust did not demand affection. Affection cannot be written into law. It demanded responsibility before distribution. I heard my own breath in the recording. Then the line I remembered most. If they challenge this trust because they hate the rules more than they miss me, then let the money go where work still means something. The screen went black. The office stayed silent. Some silences are empty. This one was crowded. Trent finally spoke. So that's it? You recorded a speech and locked us out? Harriet answered before I could. They are not locked out. They are bound by the same rules every beneficiary received notice of today. Quinn leaned forward, his voice sharper. Can this clause actually stand? Harriet slid the notarized packet toward him. It was reviewed by 2 independent attorneys. Your father completed a capacity evaluation. The trust was funded legally. The statement was witnessed, dated, and recorded. Quinn read the top page. I watched him realize the bridge he wanted to burn had warning signs built into it. Paige looked at Trent. Her expression had changed from offended to worried. That told me more than any confession. She had expected pressure to work, maybe tears, maybe legal language, maybe Ivy's face. She had not expected me to be ready. Harriet turned back to the binder. Under the redirection clause, if a beneficiary engages in bad faith contest, coercive threats, or attempts to force distribution through false claims, that beneficiary's discretionary share may be redirected. Bethany whispered, Redirected where? Harriet looked at me. I nodded. To the Barbeau Skilled Hands Fund, she said. Trent laughed, but it came out thin. Strangers. Harriet looked at him. Trade students, apprentices, adult retraining candidates, people seeking tool grants, safety boots, CNC certification, machining classes, and work they can build a life on. Trent's face hardened. So, strangers get what should belong to family? I looked at him then. Strangers showed up to learn what my children refused to respect. That struck him. Not enough to change him, enough to make him quiet. I thought of Miles Danner, 29 now. He had come into my old shop at 19 with no father around, no money, and hands that shook the first time he touched a micrometer. He called every month after Sylvie died. He fixed my porch railing without telling me. He asked after my knee before my own sons did. Blood is real, but so is showing up. Quinn closed the packet slowly. So, if we contest, we risk losing access. Harriet said, if you contest in bad faith, yes. And who decides bad faith? The trustee, subject to court review. He gave a short laugh. Convenient. Harriet's tone did not change. Mr. Barbeau, this trust was built to survive inconvenience. Bethany looked at me. Dad, did Mom know about the fund? Yes. Her voice was small. She wanted money to go to strangers? She wanted money to go where it could still teach care. Bethany wiped her face. For the first time, she did not look like she was preparing a response. She looked like she was hearing her mother. Paige stood. "I think we need our own attorney." "You have that right," Harriet said. Paige looked at Trent. "Then we should leave." Trent did not stand. That surprised me. His pride wanted to leave. His fear wanted to stay. Money has a way of making even anger sit back down. Ivy looked at him. "Dad, are you going to sue Grandpa?" Trent's mouth opened. Nothing came. That question was not legal. That was why it hurt. Quinn finally said, "We need to review options." Harriet closed the binder halfway. "You may review whatever you like, but before you choose a penis, understand the difference. You can proceed under stewardship rules, or you can challenge the trust and trigger Article 7 review." The room held its breath. Bethany looked at the 6-year ledger, then at Ivy, then at me. She was not redeemed, not yet. But something in her had stopped running. Trent rubbed his jaw, still angry. Quinn stared at the USB drive like it was a weapon he had underestimated. Paige stayed standing, but no one followed her to the door. I sat there with my hands folded over the brown notebook. I did not feel triumphant. Only older. There is no clean joy in preparing for your children to come back badly, and then being proven right. Harriet closed the video window and said, "Now you have 2 choices. Begin the stewardship period, or challenge the trust and risk losing the very money you came back for." Harriet's words stayed in the room. Begin the stewardship period, or challenge the trust and risk losing the very money you came back for. No one answered quickly. That was new. My children had come into that office with sentences ready. Business sentences, healing sentences, legal sentences. They had brought words the way soldiers bring ammunition. Now the table had gone quiet. Trent was the first to recover. "This is manipulation." Harriet looked at him. "The record shows your father acted independently. What you are feeling is consequence." Trent's face hardened. Quinn glanced at the binder, calculating again. "So, if we comply with stewardship, distributions may be considered?" "Considered," Harriet said. "Not guaranteed." That word bothered him. Considered. Men like Quinn liked doors with keypads, clear codes, clear entry. He did not like a door that asked what kind of man was standing outside. Bethany was not looking at the binder anymore. She was looking at the brown notebook under my hand. "Dad," she said quietly, "what is in it?" The 6-year ledger. For a moment, I wanted to slide it back into my coat. I wanted to say it did not matter. I wanted to protect them from what they had done, the same way I had protected myself, by calling it busy, distance, conflict, grief, anything but abandonment. But then I looked at Ivy, 15 years old, still wiping tears from her cheeks, and I understood something simple. If I kept hiding the cost, she would grow up hearing the discounted version. So I opened the ledger. The spine made a small cracking sound. No one moved. I turned to the first marked page. June 19th, I read. Father's Day. Left 3 messages. Bethany closed her eyes. I turned another page. October 3rd, Sylvie's birthday. No calls. Trent stared at the window. Lake Champlain sat gray beyond the glass, calm in the rude way nature can be calm while a family is breaking open. I read again. March 12th, knee surgery. Cora drove me home. Quinn looked down. Not ashamed enough, but not untouched. That was something. November 24th, Thanksgiving. Table for 4. 8 alone. My voice caught there. Just a little. I hated that. Old men like to believe their voices are the last loyal things they own. I breathed through it and turned one final page. Ivy's birthday. Birdhouse kit returned unopened. Ivy made a small sound. Trent rubbed his face. Paige whispered, "Trent." He pulled his hand away from hers. Not because he had changed, because shame had finally made contact. I closed the ledger halfway. "I did not write this to punish you," I said. I wrote it so I would stop making excuses for you." Nobody spoke. That sentence did more than anger ever could. Anger gives people something to fight. Truth gives them a mirror. Bethany wiped her face. "Is there any way back?" The room seemed to lean toward that question. Even Trent looked at me then, even Quinn. I kept my hand on the ledger. "Yes," I said, "but not through the trust first." Bethany frowned, confused and hurt. "What does that mean?" "It means you want money to prove you are family. I need family before money enters the room." Harriet nodded slightly. Then she explained it in the language they had come prepared to respect. The stewardship period lasts 12 months. Documented contact, community or trade mentorship hours, financial transparency for any requested support. No coercion, no pressure, no threats, no distribution is promised at the end. The trustee evaluates conduct, purpose, and need. Trent laughed bitterly. "So we have to audition to be your kids?" "No," I said. "You have to stop auditioning for my money." That landed hard. Quinn shut his laptop fully. "I'll review options." Harriet looked at him. "You have that right." "Good. But be careful which options you review. Legal review is permitted. Coercive contest has consequences under Article 7. Quinn said nothing. For once, silence looked good on him. Bethany stared at the ledger. Then she took off the expensive bracelet on her wrist and set it beside her notebook, like she needed her hands lighter. "I'll start," she said. Trent turned to her. "What?" "I'll start the stewardship period." Quinn frowned. "Bethany, don't be emotional." She looked at him. "I think emotional is what we pretended to be before asking about liquidity." That was the first time I saw my daughter stand outside the strategy. Not redeemed, not healed, but outside it. She turned to me. "I don't know how to fix what I said." "No," I said. "You don't." She swallowed. "But I can show up next Thursday." I looked at her for a long moment. A younger version of me would have accepted that too quickly. The father in me wanted to reach across the table and take any crumb that looked like love. But 6 years teaches a man to respect patterns more than promises. "Then show up," I said. Her face crumpled a little. Maybe she wanted more. Maybe I did too. But more had to be earned slowly. Ivy stepped closer. "Grandpa?" "Yes." "Can I still build the birdhouse?" That nearly undid me. Not the trust, not the millions. A birdhouse. A small thing I had kept plans for because some foolish part of me still believed a child might come back and ask. "I kept the plans," I said. She cried again. So did Bethany. Trent looked away, but not fast enough. He had seen what money could not buy, back once it was carelessly thrown away. Harriet closed the binder gently. "This meeting will be documented," she said. "No distributions will be made today." Trent opened his mouth, then closed it. "Good." Harriet continued. "Any beneficiary wishing to pursue stewardship may contact my office in writing. Any beneficiary wishing to contest may do the same." Paige stood stiffly by the door. Quinn gathered his laptop. Trent stayed seated a few seconds longer than pride allowed. Bethany did not move. She looked at the ledger like it was not an accusation anymore, but a map of the damage. I closed the 6-year ledger, but I did not put it away. Some doors can open again, but only if the people outside stop knocking with invoices. No money changed hands that day. That was the first consequence. Not one check, not one transfer, not one emergency exception dressed up as family repair. Harriet documented the meeting, closed the binder, and sent everyone home with the same rule they had walked in, refusing to accept. The trust stayed closed. The door did not. That distinction mattered. Trent did not call for 2 weeks. When he finally did, he left a short message saying he needed time to process the legal implications. Not the family implications, the legal ones. Quinn sent Harriet an email asking for clarification of compliance pathways, which sounded less like a son coming home and more like a startup founder reading terms of service. Paige stayed quiet. That was probably the kindest thing she did. Bethany came the next Thursday, 12 minutes late. She brought coffee I do not drink and talked too much about accountability work, repair language, and emotional systems. I let her talk until she ran out of professional words and had to sit across from me like a daughter. Then I said, "Next Thursday, come early enough to make coffee here." She came back. Then she came again. That was new. Not dramatic, not perfect, but new. She started her stewardship period at the Barbeau Skilled Hands Fund, not with a speech, but with cardboard boxes and dull scissors. She sorted safety glasses, called trade schools, organized applications, and helped a single mother fill out a form for a welding program. One afternoon, that woman said, "I feel embarrassed asking for help." Bethany stopped writing. Then she said, "Don't be. Help is only shameful when someone uses it to own you." I looked up from across the room. For the first time in years, I heard my daughter say something that did not sound rehearsed. Ivy came back too. Once a month at first, then twice. We built the birdhouse. It leaned a little to the left, and the roof had one corner that refused to sit flat. I told her, "Good, now it looks like something a human made." She laughed. There was sawdust on her sleeve. I had not known how badly I needed to see that. One day she asked, "Did you really remember every birthday?" I shook my head. "No, I am old, not holy, but I remembered enough to try." She nodded. That was enough for her. And at my age, enough is sometimes a holy thing. The trust rules remained exactly where they were. Bethany did not receive a distribution. Trent did not receive a distribution. Quinn did not receive a distribution. Harriet sent the quarterly report with the same clean language she always used. Bethany had entered stewardship. Trent had not responded except through counsel. Quinn had requested more details but had not begun. No beneficiary distributions approved. Some people might call that cold. I call it honest. One apology does not become stewardship until time tests it. And one painful meeting does not erase 6 years of silence. The Skilled Hands Fund began small. A few tool grants, certification fees, safety boots, a short course in CNC machining. Dale Porter, an old machinist instructor, came by to help the first class and told the students, "If you can blame the machine 3 times in 1 hour, congratulations, you are ready for management." I laughed harder than I should have. Maybe because laughter had been rare in that building for me. Maybe because something useful was growing where entitlement had failed. I was not a perfect father. I will not polish that part of the story. I gave too much of myself to the company when my children were young. I thought work could explain love. I thought providing could cover absence. I was wrong. But children do not get to turn every wound into an invoice. Pain deserves to be heard. It does not deserve a blank check. The trust was not there to keep my children out. It was there to make sure money did not get in before love did. A few months after the meeting, Ivy hung the birdhouse in my backyard. Bethany held the ladder steady. She did not make a speech. She did not ask about the trust. She just handed me the next nail when I reached for it. A small thing. But after 6 years, small things can sound like a beginning. I did not get those years back. I did not hand over the trust. But I got one Thursday, then another, and my granddaughter laughing in the yard with sawdust on her hands. Sometimes that is not forgiveness yet. Sometimes it is just the first honest payment toward it. Thank you for spending this time with me today, and for listening to this memory all the way through. Please tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and what time it is where you live right now. If this story moved you even a little, please don't forget to subscribe to Final Act Revenge. Another story is waiting for you on your screen right now. YouTube believes you may enjoy it. So please take care of your health, drink some water, and enjoy the next one.